All right, everyone, welcome back to the Wargiven Racing Podcast for the second episode of today, episode 6.5, and the recap of the Daytona 500 single car qualifying runs. So they just wrapped up. I figured I'd come to you guys as live as possible, as fast as NASCAR could get the results into their website, which we shall be using today. So let's take a look at that. Starting on the pole for your 2022 Daytona 500 is the defending Cup champion himself, Kyle Larson, in his number 5 Chevrolet Camaro for Hendrick Motorsports. The most successful team in NASCAR history has done it again. With Alex Bowman last year, Kyle Larson this year. Bowman, a solid second place, qualifies himself onto the outside pole. Fifth front row start in a Daytona 500, which was a stat brought up in tonight's Fox Sports 1 broadcast. Great job tonight by them. Quite impressed. No glitches. Any technical bugs they had in LA fixed. So a wonderful way to start the season off for them. Some other fun facts that I may bring up that was brought up by different people on Twitter have to do with a certain person that qualified for today's event. But of course, I will hold off on that until later. So just looking real quickly at the top 10 here who made it to the second round of today's qualifying. Earlier I'd said, they'd split the groups up, take the top 5 from each. I was wrong. It was all 42 cars went. The top 10 went on to the next round. So 10 cars still in the second round, just a different way of getting there. So the surprise of the session, Eric Almirola breaks up the Chevrolets of Hendrick Motorsports with the 4th place qualifying, meaning that Almirola will start on the outside row in his duel tomorrow night. Almirola is a good super speedway racer. I'm not surprised to see him up here, but I'm surprised to see him be the only Stewart-Haas car up here and to be so far up over his other teammates. Chase Elliott had a disappointing second run, as you can see here, on a super speedway. Over 0.2 of a second is a massive difference. So that was quite surprising to see him drop back to 5th. The Hendrick cars in the first run, which they don't show here, oh my God. They came out, I think they were 4 of the last 5 cars, 4 of the last 6 cars, and they blitzed the field. Absolutely smoked them, like demolished. So I was expecting Elliott to stay in the top 4 at least, but that did not happen. Oh well, so sad. I'm crying so much for the Hendrick team and their superb night. Then we come to the first Toyota of the night, which was Martin Truex Jr. Again, a bit of a surprise. I thought Denny Hamlin would be there, but flip and flop. And then we go to Ross Chastain, Denny Hamlin, Daniel Suarez, and Harrison Burton. The other surprise of the night, Harrison Burton, the rookie, the only rookie to make the top 10 with the Wood brothers. Very impressive on his debut. Let's see how he holds up in the pack tomorrow. As a rookie, it's really just survival, in my opinion. He impressed tonight, being able to stay steady under the pressure. I mean, in the driver interviews after the qualifying session, they're complimenting their crew chiefs and their teams and their crews. And that all makes sense because, you're not at a super speedway, you're going flat out. You're not lifting at all. So it makes sense that the setup's super important, but at the same time, you're going, and granted, it was only 180 miles an hour tonight, but they're going 180 miles an hour into these banked corners. And to hold it super steady like Larson, Bowman did, and Byron, all within 1/10 of a second of each other's, insanely impressive. So to have a rookie do that, first time, new car for everybody, but first time in the Cup car, second ever Cup start, first at Daytona. That's quite impressive. And then we go to the next 10. So starting with Daniel Hemrick. Great night for him. Daniel Hemrick, who's the defending Xfinity champion, in his first Cup race since 2019, which he got dropped after the season by Richard Childress Racing. He had a good night. He was on top. He went first. He was the first car out, stayed on the provisional pole up until, Harrison Burton. Yeah, up until Harrison Burton, I think. So a very strong night from Hemrick. Slightly disappointing that he didn't get into that top 10. He deserved it. Um, but still a good day. He'll be starting on the inside row of his duel. And then we come to the Penske Bros of Logano and Blaney. Good night, solid, kind of um, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick. I mean, if you look how close the field is, so this all was the second run, right? All the second run. Now, granted, none of these runs went faster than any of these runs, but I mean, look at the gap here. 479. 20th was only 4,500 hundredths off. And I mean, the broadcast brought this up. The next gen car is a stock car, practically in every sense of the word. The teams are not making the cars anymore. They're buying the parts, they're assembling the cars, they're setting up the cars. They aren't personally manufacturing the cars, which is massively different compared to anything else done in NASCAR history. So small teams or smaller teams are close. Daniel Hemrick's racing for Colleague Racing, a team that 5 years ago didn't even exist in the Xfinity series. Now they've firmly established themselves as a quality Xfinity organization. They won a Cup race last year in the 16 with AJ Allmendinger at Indianapolis on the road course. And in the Xfinity series, they're the kings of the super speedways. So tonight just reaffirmed that, they know their setups, they know their crap. And a good night for Hemrick, who's running part-time this year for the 16 car. So, and now we take a look at 21 through 30. The big surprise is right here. Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick. With how close this field's going to be on this race, you would expect that these two guys, both Cup champions, experienced drivers, would be able to be higher. They're 0.6 slower than the pole. Nearly 2.5 tenths slower than the 11th place. That's insane. I mean, maybe they just didn't have the setup. The Fords were fast in practice, but that was because of their pack racing. The Toyotas, I wasn't able to see much because I didn't watch the first practice session. I was making dinner or doing something. I can't remember. But insane that these two are this far down. I mean, maybe they're just kind of riding around. They know they're in the show. They don't have to do much. And that is one thing I kind of hate about the charters, especially at the Daytona 500. 36 of these drivers know they're in. They just don't know where they're starting. But regardless, kind of days for Haley, Buescher, Custer. LaJoy, 30th. Okay. Eric Jones and Ty Dillon, I mean, only 700 separating the two. That's pretty good for their new team. Michael McDowell, again, solid. Cedric, solid, even though he didn't make the top 10. I mean, as a rookie, you're above Cup champions. That's a win. Then we come down to the last 10, 12 drivers. We're still in the charter. 33rd's the first open car of the night. Todd Gilliland, I mean, what you would expect, first time driving super speedway in a car. I mean, he was a truck driver. He raced in the truck series for a few years, won a few races. Not a bad driver. But his first time in a stock car. In a competitive sense, not counting last week's clash. The biggest surprise, I mean, I know I just said Harvick and Kurt Busch, big surprise. This is shocking. JTG goes from a 2-car team to a 1-car team. So now they've got more resources. They have committed sponsors. They have a veteran driver in Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who, despite all of the crap he gets for being Ricky Wreckhouse, as I call him, is a good driver on a super speedway. Has won races at Daytona. Had qualified on pole with them in 2020. 32nd? Nearly a second off. I mean, that nearly over a half a second off of 11th place. Yikes. So, really bad day. They take the L, the big L for today. And then we come to the first winner. Noah Gragson, who I did predict earlier today to make the show. Made the show on speed. So, yes, he has his duel tomorrow, but he doesn't need to race hard. I mean, he will probably because it's Noah Gragson. But at the same time, just kind of wow. The team he races for is four races a year. They come out for the super speedways. They may make an appearance at Las Vegas every now and then, where they're based out of, or at least where they're from. But they to show up just like this and make the show on speed, pretty damn good. Landon Castle, Cody Ware, and then Jacques Villeneuve, the other driver I said, not because I thought he'd make it because of how experienced he is in general, because this is his, I believe, fifth Cup race, or at least his fifth attempt at a Cup race. He tried the Daytona 500 once, did not qualify, but he managed to do so today. I picked him because he's driving a Ford and has the number 27, which is a fantastic number for multiple different reasons. But he qualified on speed. And that's impressive when his biggest experience is open wheel race cars. I mean, I've never driven a race car, so how would I know? But the fact that he was able to do that, and again, this team, brand new team, coming over from Europe with personnel from one of the truck teams, Ream Brothers Racing, fantastic job. I'm extremely happy for them, and I'm happy they don't have to race tomorrow super tense with only their one car and risk it getting destroyed. Now we get to the next two open cars, Kaz Grala and Greg Biffle. Dead even practically. I mean, impressive because they outran two chartered teams and then the two MBM cars who just ignore them. They don't exist. I mean, obviously they're still going to race tomorrow, but ooh, it's going to be a rough 60 laps. I mean, there's not much you can say. They're new teams. They're working on their setup. They're working on just keeping the car clean, not blowing the engine. I doubt they have a backup engine. So, you know, still good. I'm not going to lie. I was expecting more out of BJ McLeod. Second year, right? Alliance with Stuart Haas, which nowadays probably just means, you know, more help on the setups and more data and better technology, or better engine supply, more constant engine supply. So to have him 39th, kind of sad, kind of disappointing. But, you know, again, he's got a charter. He's in the show. David Reagan, again, another one of those, I think he kind of was just feeling it out. Can kind of feel it out in the back of the pack tomorrow and try to improve his way up. Then we come to the two MBM cars. And I give them a lot of crap normally. I really do. I mean, I think it's valiant that they somehow scraped together enough money to buy two next-gen chassis as a small team. But what on good God are you doing? I mean, 2.5 seconds off with Timmy Hill, and he's him and JJ Yelly about the same. But 2.5 and 2 3/10 off in a spec car. I mean, I don't have last year's time. Here, I'm actually going to look up last year's times. I'm going to look up last year's times because I think they're slower.